Welcome back to The Future of Flexibility, a podcast series where we explore the rapidly evolving landscape of access control technology and how flexibility plays a big part. I'm Lee, the CEO of the Access Control Executive Brief, and I'm coming to you live from the show floor at ISC West 2025, specifically from the ZKTeco USA booth. In our premiere episode, Manish, president and founder of ZKTeco USA, and I set the stage for understanding the critical crossroads where our industry stands today. In episode 2, we're diving deep into the most impactful trends reshaping access control as we speak. I'm thrilled to be joined once again by Manish, and we have two special guests that are going to be joining us today. Sal, who's an OSDP specialist who brings invaluable expertise on the new standards transforming our industry, and Esteban, who is a product specialist at ZKTeco USA, and he's going to bring insights on the latest innovations. So Sal, since you have a tight schedule, I'm going to start with him today, and we'll focus on our first segment that's going to focus on OSDP and the standardization before he has to leave us today. So let me quick set the agenda. We'll be exploring 3 major topics that are fundamentally changing access control. The first one's going to be the rapid adoption of mobile credentials, the industry-wide shift toward OSDP as the new standard protocol, and the balance between robust security and seamless user experience. This live conversation here at ISC West gives us a perfect opportunity to see these trends in action. So let's dive right in. In our first episode, like we said, we discussed how the industry has experienced a phase change with new expectations creating both challenges and opportunities. One of the most significant shifts is the belief in the need of standardization. And particularly, this is a lot of talk around OSDP, which I think is your fault, but no. So Sal.
Guilty.
As the OSDP specialist, can you start by explaining what exactly is the standard? Why is it becoming so popular and critical? And how is it changing the landscape today?
Sure. No, thank you, Lee. Thank you, Manish and Esteban. Really glad to be here. It's been a great show, right,
Yeah,
Brad?
so
I think
fun.
all the way
Yeah,
around.
absolutely.
Very much so.
Yeah,
Super.
so I think, first of all, thanks to Sia and the ISC West folks for putting out another fabulous event.
Great.
So what is OSDP, right? So OSDP is a way for effectively for a card reader to talk to a door controller in a secure manner. And you would think, okay, well, these are security systems. Why do you need a standard for that? Well, one, because most of the card readers and door controllers use something which is called a Wiegand interface. And the Wiegand interface is not secure.
Right.
And it's not even really a protocol. It's just a one-way message sending a number upstream. So it doesn't allow you to manage an endpoint. It doesn't provide you a secure interface. And it's just really not fit for purpose for any security or access control system. OSDP as a standard is something that evolved probably almost 15 years ago. Initially by HID, Mercury when it wasn't part of HID, and Linnell. And the reason that they wanted to do that is a number of companies that tried to implement secure communications protocol, but of course they each rolled their own.
Right.
So if you're an access control vendor like ZKTeco and you're making panels as well as all the other great stuff you make, you'd like to have a common way of talking securely to all the other readers out there in the world. And even though you had your own protocol, it would still do at one point, you realize that there's a lot of benefits if there was a standardized way of talking to people. So that's what OSDP provides. It provides one way for controllers and card readers to talk securely, and to do that in a way which allows you to actually manage security systems like modern IoT systems, in the sense that you can manage them. In the old days, it was actually required for you to go touch each endpoint in order to update them.
Yeah.
So if you're a big company with 10,000 readers, the idea of updating your readers and sending a technician to 10,000 endpoints is not only expensive, time sensitive, just kind of an overall nightmare. OSDP, by its ability to manage endpoint remotely, also addresses that problem. So there's operational efficiencies, there's security benefits, there's lower cost of development in terms of code supporting multiple devices. I mean, really just seems to be a win-win-win. And you can have a standard, but the real proof of pudding is whether it gets adopted in the marketplace at the end of the day.
Yep.
And there's been overwhelming acceptance of OSDP. I mean, if you'd like me to, I could go into the breadth of that. I mean,
that was
might even be your next question.
That was my next question.
So we ID Machines for SIA runs something called OSTP Verified, which is a certification program. We've had companies from North America, Asia, Europe, literally around the world, 30 different companies, over 100 different products, and new ones showing up every day. I mean, besides ZKTeco's products, which were early on, they on board the train and a leader in adopting OSTP. I mean, we've actually certified products from Ukraine, Slovakia, Finland, Korea. I mean, it's a global thing at this point.
All right. So on that, if I am looking to transition and do that, what type of advice do you have sort of on navigating that transition that maybe helps? I got to believe there's some learnings that have come along the way. What are some of those?
Yeah, so there is, SIA has an OSTP technical subcommittee where this stuff is actively under development. So if you really want to learn about what's going on, participation in that is probably the best thing that you could do.
Right.
Getting a copy of the standard is not a bad way to start.
Yeah,
why not?
Educate yourself on it?
Yeah. And then besides that, to help the industry, we've developed a number of videos and other stuff which SIA has out there. And importantly, there's 2 GitHub repositories that we put out. One is called OSTP Lib Conformance, which is actually a reference implementation
like a library
for a card reader and door controller. It's actually a Linux library, which is free and you can use. It's the exact same test harness that we use when we're doing verified. And then there's also another SIA GitHub repository, which is called OSTP Verified, which has all of the profiles. So there's a profile for readers, there's a profile for controllers, there's a profile for biometrics, there's a profile for smart cards. And so knowing what the requirements are for your profile, and then for each of those profiles, there's actually a test case that describes what's required for that particular profile and all the requirements. So participate in the subcommittees, go to the GitHub repos, check out the SIA websites, Google OSTP.
Yeah, I got you.
Talk to Lee, talk to Manesh. I mean, all these guys provide resources.
I got you. So those are said a lot. Actually, you packed in. I appreciate that. You can tell you've done this before. But if I could speak to specific personas for a second, because if I'm an integrator, that may not be what. So, what are some key? It could. Okay. No, that's what I'm gonna ask. Like, what are some key takeaways, if you would, for the different personas that, if I'm interested in this, is it basically general, like everybody does the same thing, or like?
So I'd start with the specifiers, right? Okay. So please stop specifying 125 kilohertz cards, which is not related to the protocol. So just to be clear, it's not about cards, and it's not about what happens between the controller and the head end for the most part. It's really about the card reader, the door controller. So if you're a specifier, please don't specify a Wiegand interface, right? Specify OSTP. And then of course, I'm completely biased. Also specify OSTP verified, right?
Sure.
So people who have gone through the program, like ZKTeco and others, right? You're not alone. No. Can take advantage of the fact that they've gone through and had third-party testing, and we're not easy on you guys, right? It's hard. I mean, it's hardly a rubber stamp, right? So you come out the other end of the tunnel. There's a reason for people to feel confident when they buy a product that's OSTP verified. As an integrator, don't install Wiegand, right? Simply, right? And understand what it means to do OSTP properly. So I'll just give an example. Each card reader to door controller should have a unique key pair. Don't use the same keys for everywhere, right? So specify it properly, install it properly, and maintain it properly as an integrator. As a manufacturer, use the tools that I've talked about, get your stuff OSTP verified. As an end user, attend a boot camp, which is the other thing that we run for SIA, and get some hands-on training. Take advantage of those programs that are out there. I could keep going.
No, but let me ask you, because so that is great advice, especially for new construction or new installs. What do I do if I have existing stuff?
So if you've got existing stuff, probably the first thing you want to check is if you can use the existing wiring, right? Because OSTP uses 4 wires. Wiegand uses at least 4 wires. You might be able to use those same 4 wires. If that's the case and your controller supports OSTP, you could just have it switch those readers to OSTP mode, put an OSTP reader in the wall, and you're up and running. So that could be really easy.
All right.
It could also require you to pull new wire. So I think that's really the first thing you want to determine, Lee,
Yeah.
whether or not this is just simply swapping something out
Right.
and just replacing a reader and getting it on the latest
Right.
version of things.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's the
No,
place
but that
to
is,
start.
it's practical at that point. But I would even start with the first part is to make the conscious decision that you're going to do this.
Well,
right?
there's good
Versus-
reasons for that, right?
Yeah.
It's like today, even the accountants know that if you're using Wiegand, you're probably violating some cybersecurity framework. So rather than wait until someone writes you up and sends you a ticket to to Wiegand jail, you get your OSDP out of jail
I
card.
gotcha. Yeah, which is actually interesting. So one of the trends that it's not even a trend, but it's actually a movement. Um, Sitting through, listening to what's been happening at the show, there's a lot of RSA education. I think so. This a lot of this sounds like that to me. That's like good hygiene. A lot of the stuff that they're talking about. This sounds like good hygiene,
Yeah,
or like what we should do. So is it a period of time where this is about transition, or like are we gonna at some point not be having this conversation because this is like the standard of how things work?
It's rolling that way forward, but as you know, access control systems
Yeah.
tend to have long lives,
Yeah, things
right?
don't happen overnight.
Right. So if you've got something that's been installed 5 years ago,
Uh,
it's probably going to be in the field for 10 more years. So there's no immediate, sword of Damocles hanging over someone's head that says you got to go transition to OSPP.
yeah.
It's probably a good idea, and then it just becomes a question of where you stand in terms of the assets that you're protecting,
Right.
and whether or not that kind of vulnerability is something that could really bite you at the end of the day.
I got you. So it's like good insurance too to just get ahead of that
Well,
before.
on the insurance topic,
Yeah.
if you've got cyber insurance
Uh,
and you're using OSDP, you're probably in a better place with regards to premium than you would be if you're using Wiegand.
awesome.
At some point, people may be smart enough to actually ask that
For that.
in the cybersecurity application
Yeah.
for your systems.
Oh, very nice. All right, I know you got a busy schedule. You popped in here to give us this ton of information. I really do appreciate it. Thank you for joining us to be part of this. Really, the important conversations about how the future of flexibility. This delivers a lot of flexibility to the systems, as well as good amount of protection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sorry that I have to hit and run,
I
but
know,
this
that's
has
a
been
show.
great.
When you're an important guy, you got important things to do. I get it. Thanks for making the
Well,
time.
yeah, well, thank
Thank
you
you.
for that. Hey, both of you guys,
Thank you so much.
pleasure.
All right, so now we're going to switch gears a little bit to the next trend, which is around mobile. And frankly, I want to talk a lot about the adoption. So I'm going to start with you, Esteban, on this one. If you could talk to me a little bit about what you're seeing in the adoption of it, like level set for us, sort of like where we're at currently now.
Sure. So, I mean, I think when we started off seeing mobile a couple of years ago, we knew it as Bluetooth.
Yeah.
And then a lot of the early adoption was a little difficult because the technology on phones. So a lot of the earlier phones, some didn't have Bluetooth, they weren't smartphones. So it was kind of like, depending on what technology you had with you, you had to decide what you were going to use to verify with.
Right.
So as it evolved, now more phones are coming with Bluetooth, and now you're starting to see even more. Now Bluetooth is not secure; it's not as stable. It's not the best option. So now we're starting to now see the mobile wallet credentials. So now that's using NFC. Now that's going to be, I see a little bit more of a tougher rollout, but I do see adoption happening. Once again, with smartphones, as they keep making them, not everyone had NFC in them.
Right.
Now they're starting to.
Right.
So now it's just the matter of the education, understanding what the benefit of the wallet credentials are,
Yep.
the companies that are offering them, how to procure them, the cost, and overall, really the simplicity of being able to use it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Manesh said you've been intimately involved in this along the entire process. You and I have had these conversations. I think we can say it's been years now.
Oh yes,
That's this
absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
So can you share a little bit about on the terms of the adoption of how it's changing the whole conversation around convenience and security? Like where are
Yeah.
we at with that?
That's right. Let me start with the OSDP.
Okay.
And this is something where I was surprised. I just came back from London conference, which is the biggest community I have seen in a single building all about smart buildings.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there were like 1,200 people there, and the level of I would say the awareness of security
Yeah.
in terms of access control is just one part of the whole smart building where, they control all the HVAC and lightings and all the other sensors, data, what they get. I was shocked that, how much interest they have for OSDP and upgrading, the retrofits and the, things like that. So, they had a nice saying, when the new construction slows, the retrofit grows. So that's the key. Uh, the second part of it is all about these credentials. So, Esteban talked about Bluetooth and NFC, but after the pandemic, when visitor management became a key component of access control, so the QR code and what we commonly call in our company a poor man's mobile credential, because it's free, and but you still use it on the phone.
Right.
And that became so popular. So the adoption of mobile credentials is gaining strength day by day. And now both the two dominant players are open to work with manufacturers like us to allow us to implement their mobile credentials on our devices made by us, and share with the customers and all those stuff. So we are seeing a big shift even from the two big players, as well as the mobile manufacturers as well.
Yeah, what's interesting on that is that the opportunities that it creates seem to be shifting where the value used to be to where companies wouldn't collaborate because that's where the value was.
That's right.
Now that the value shifted with the convenience story, whether it's operational efficiencies, revenue generation, whatever it might be, they are now introducing the what is better for the customer. So there is that relationship on that end. All right. So Esteban, if we take that, and like, great. So it's coming. We see it. Just like the question I had around OSDP, if I had to, what are some of the infrastructure things I should be thinking about if I want to adopt mobile?
Well, the number one thing you're going to have to look into is the hardware and the devices.
We're doing this live, so that stuff's going to happen. Sorry. Go on, Esteban. You got it.
So the first thing you're going to have to analyze is your existing hardware. Can my existing hardware support this? And if I am looking to change, what current hardware or what hardware is going to be out there that I can choose that if something changes in the next 5-10 years, can that hardware support it without me having to rip it out and replace it? Right. So one thing I can talk about what we've done is we've started to create readers and offerings that we invite you to bring your own credential. We really want to future-proof access control in the future, so you're not switching out readers constantly just because there's a new technology. So the readers we've been developing over the last year or two are all compatible with these mobile wallet vendors, the companies that oversee the wallets, right? We're making sure that we're in compliance with all them and that we're open to working with them, along with, like you mentioned, the QR codes, right? So if your phone doesn't have the NFC, like we talked before, right? You don't want to use Bluetooth, right? QR code, nobody has an issue with that. It's easy to show on the phone. I can pull it up at any time and I can just show it, and it's super fast. So when it comes to that, main thing you have to do is analyze your existing hardware, where you expect to be in the next 5 years, and then also, what's your price point? Find what you're willing to pay for a credential. Can I afford, a Bluetooth credential? Does that make sense for my company? Does it make sense to go with a wallet credential?
QR code, whatever.
Or, hey, I don't really want to spend that much money or any money, but I want to do mobile. Okay, I'll just offer a QR code. So having the devices that are equipped to be able to do all that really give you the complete flexibility and preparing for that future.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. There's a choice that you can have now, applied probably more to what is the application. So it's almost like solution-based application of like selling, I guess, that would say, hey, you could have, what do you need? Let's put the solution together. Which is just a different way than we've approached a lot of this, right? Where it's like, realistically, primarily it was like, what cards do you want? And then maybe fobs, maybe some biometrics, but it was primarily like cards. And it was like, what do you want on the card? It was a card, that right? Whereas now, that experience that you want to have, whether you're hospitality, enterprise, whatever it might be, I can now apply that and really look at that entire experience, which is kind of nice because it's no longer just a utility that we're talking about. It's now around experience that's there. That's
so
pretty fascinating.
Like you just said, last, like, my first 5 ISCs, the question is, what kind of cards can these read, right? Now, customer comes up, oh, well, what do these do? And I can just go, what do you want it to do, or what do you need it to do? And, it kind of blows their mind a little bit because they're like, I don't have an answer for that. And they're like, I don't know. And so I'll start rifling off what he needs to do. And you just see like light bulbs go off in their head. Like, oh, I can use this for this. I can use that for that. Oh, QR code. So they don't have to buy credentials? No, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Oh, does it work with this? Does it work with that? Yeah.
Back to the whole flexibility conversation.
100%.
It's somewhat of a mind shift change to
Yeah.
how we would apply our technology and application.
So I would like to add to that is like, when the cloud systems initially came in 5 years ago.
I've heard of those.
Okay,
So, yeah.
I'm sure. So ISO 27001, SOC 2, penetration testing was all, standards which all the software platforms had to meet.
Yeah.
But now with this intelligent edge devices, it's similar thing what Sal said that, okay, when you ask, okay, what is the, things needs to be considered. So OSDP is one, it's all the check marks, OSDP, mobile credentials, the security, like because the edge devices are also IP-based devices. So are they going to be secured? Are they going to have secure boot and disk encryption and all those stuff? So I think those are the hardware standards which are going to be standard going forward, and to match with the security on the software side. And I think now you have a perfect solution. And then taking one step forward on the credentials, when now there is the gap between the credentials and identity is narrowing.
Yep.
So decentralized ID and mobile driver's license and things like that, right?
Yeah.
It's
Which
going
is
to be all there.
You bring so my next
Yeah.
question I had here for you. I'm going to answer it myself too when we go to this,
Sure.
but I'll ask it then. Give me a second to go riff on it a little bit. But so everybody here now, like you walk around the halls,
Yeah.
and like we wrote about in the last brief, everyone has mobile at this point,
Yeah.
which is nice, right? It's good, but it's also, I don't know, it kind of all looks the same in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. So when you think about the way that it's being applied, what are some things that you're seeing that are somewhat exciting or different, like value creation on that side?
Mm-hmm.
The other part that you mentioned, the decentralized identity, which I
Yeah.
find interesting, and there's some booths and people are talking about it, is that you go, it's when you look at the marketplace from a card standpoint, you view to the forward future part, it goes to mobile. But when you view even further out, you see the decentralized identity side of what's going on
Yeah.
that end, and the mobile doesn't look as far as a leap from cards as it
Yeah.
does, because even further out, you get the centralized. I find that decentralized identity conversation
Yeah.
and what you can do with that coupled with mobile and what you're doing is super exciting. What
is.
things are you seeing that you're finding to be exciting around it?
So as you rightly pointed out, right now with the mobile credentials, you're limited to just put a digital card in your wallet.
Right.
With decentralized ID, again, it's your wallet. So you
Right.
decide, just like on the hardware side, as Esteban said, bring your own credentials. Now put your own whatever credentials you want in your wallet, which is with the decentralized ID, right? So I have the flexibility to use card here, QR code there, my biometrics here on this platform, and I don't have to switch between the different credentials or identities. So it's one wallet, and I can choose what I want
You
to
do
do.
what you want. So
Yeah.
flexibility. Again,
Flexibility,
back
yeah.
to the flexibility.
I think
Agreed.
one important thing to add to that is also a lot of these credentials, whether it's Bluetooth, NFC, wallet, whatever you want to call it, a lot of these are going on people's personal phones, right? So a lot of them, they necessarily don't want this on their personal phone.
Right.
They're fine with it being on a work phone. I'm using this to get into work. But now when you're starting to put, credentials to get into, my office or anything like that, now you're putting that on my phone. You're asking me to load apps that I don't want, or, access to my wallet, just for work. I don't want that.
Just the pure side, that's my wallet.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, it's my wallet. So with the decentralized, that's yours. You own that, right? And like he was mentioning with decentralized, now there's more options to do with that, right? So that also brings in biometrics. If I need to use a biometric template, I can store that on my phone and then choose who is allowed to use it, for how long, and how it's used.
Yeah. So let's switch gears just a little bit to that. And so around mobile, we like to talk about how wonderful and all the positive, but the reality is that there is friction.
There is.
So, and there are barriers and that. So can you talk a little bit about what are some of those barriers? Because I think if we address them, we talk about them, people start to understand them, but then also we can get beyond them in some cases, or in some cases not get beyond them, but just at least know how to work with them instead of being surprised. So what are some barriers that we're seeing to adoption?
I think we're talking a little bit of a devil's advocate here, right?
Okay.
So we want to promote using a phone instead of a physical card,
Right.
but at the end of the day, a phone is also kind of a physical card or tool, right?
Yep.
So I'm still using that phone. I can still hold it up, get in, but nothing is stopping me from still passing that same phone over to Manish, saying, "Hey, just hand this back to me when you get back in." Right? So that's where we're starting to see a lot more interest in the biometrics, where it's something that's not so easily handed over or copied or reproduced. The technology has come a long way from what people thought it was, 5, 10 years ago, where it was just like, oh, I can just grab someone's picture and hold it up.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's not the case anymore. The technology's advanced, it's evolved, and people are starting to see even more convenience. And it doesn't necessarily have to be face, so you don't have to be scared of that, right? And it doesn't have to be fingerprint where you can touch stuff. We've introduced the palm over the last 2 years, and people are surprised you can do that. It's like, yeah, absolutely. It's a biometric template. So you're not dependent on any physical thing except your actual self.
Yourself.
Yeah, you are your credential.
Okay.
Yeah.
I got you. So, all right, you bring up biometrics, and this leads us to the next part of this. The trend that we're talking about is we talked a little bit about it already, but I want to dive deeper into the sort of cross between the user experience side and safety and security. So, if I was to take a look at that, how and specifically around biometrics. So you talked about it from I'll call it how I define what you just said there was like high policy level of assurance.
Yeah, sure.
Yep.
But there's also an aspect of it you talked about where I don't have anything with me. I could just come up to it
Yeah.
and it works. So can you talk a little bit about how biometrics and then your multi-technology products that you have are helping with the seamless and the security side of things?
Yeah. So, last night I came to the airport and the officer did not even had to scan my passport.
Right.
I only had to look at the camera. He asked me a couple of questions and I just walked into the country, right?
Yep.
So that frictionless experience, what you can get with touchless biometrics like face and palm and, iris up to on a certain extent is just the users, when they see the convenience and when they see how it works on our readers, how flexible it is that you can rotate your hands and all those stuff, that's a great experience what they get.
Right.
The only thing they are concerned is about, in case of face biometrics, is
Right.
about the privacy, which again, SIA is doing a good job of, helping educate the end users about the ethical use of it and safe use of it, versus what it's used, by the law enforcement and all those stuff. So I think the more and more awareness is coming. Same happened in Europe, the same thing. Yeah, now you don't have to. There are no officers. You just walk into the country just by scanning your passport and face, and you're done. So, and with the adoption by airlines and the government, and now with this mobile driver's license, I think it's becoming more and more prevalent. And on our side, especially with the edge devices becoming more and more powerful and feature rich,
Right.
where we can do single factor, multi-factor, whether it's biometric plus anything, card or QR code or whatever. So that's another thing.
Well, you mentioned that. So
Yeah.
to dive a little bit deeper into, because we talked about flexibility needed, which also means with these multi-technology readers and things like controlling, right, you need to have the things there to be able to deliver flexibility.
Right.
So you could speak to it a little bit when we say multi-tech, most of us probably know that as multiple card types,
Sure.
right? Like you're
Sure.
talking about.
Yeah.
But this is different.
Yeah.
So regardless if it's your specific one, it's the concept and idea. We can talk about you. We'll talk about your specific, but the concept and the idea. What do you mean by multi-technology readers?
So what we're really focusing on is basically, like I mentioned before, the bring your own credential.
Right.
So these readers have the possibility to be able to do, whether you want to do a face, you can program it to do a face. If you want it to do a palm, you can program it to do a palm. these are already built-in functions. If I wanted to read card or whoever I want to come in, whatever their preferred method of accessing, they're doing it from one single point. So, for example, if you're walking through New York City or any major city, how many times have you come up to a building that has about 9 different readers for 9 different things, right? So you'll have the intercom there,
Yeah.
right? The push button intercom.
Call it wall acting.
Yeah, wall acting, right? You'll
Yeah.
have one keypad reader, another card reader,
Yeah.
and then another thing with an actual like switch or something you have to push in order to call somebody else.
Right.
So why can't that just be limited to one single device that can handle that? And that's what we're trying to bring to the table, and what we're seeing a lot of customers preferring to do. It's like we're tired of having 4 different readers to eventually
Do a
just gain
single
access,
function.
right?
Yeah.
To do one single
Which
function.
is actually the same thing that the other one's doing.
Yeah.
Just for the different user type, though.
Right.
On that side.
Right.
Okay, so if I'm a specifier, if I'm an integrator on this, like, what recommendations then do you have if I apply that? Because we're talking almost like a change management in a lot of ways, right? 'Cause
It is,
A
yeah.
lot of people have been trained to say like, hey, I'm going to try to limit that, but still, you're not going to have it because the intercom does something different than what like you're
Exactly.
saying. So,
Right, yeah.
so what advice do you have to people that are want to fix that?
So on the software side now, it's no longer just access control and video. It's access control, video, visitor management, intercom,
Correct.
all built into one, right?
Yep.
And now the hardware at the door, it had no match for that, to do that. So now the conversation is around, okay, it's not just multi-tech reading different credentials, but it's multi-function as well. If I have a reader which has a nice display and it has a keypad and all the stuff, why I can use it as an intercom?
Right.
And, it has a camera, it has it's a speaker, it has a mic and all those stuff. So, and same for visitor management. If I am issuing QR codes, why can't it read QR codes on the same reader? Why I need different reader for that? So those are the things, which we are seeing. And we are glad that other companies are also adopting that
Correct.
same thing. Embracing the new hardware and matching to the capabilities of their clouds.
Which is actually interesting because you think
Yeah.
about it historically was always the software had to adapt to the hardware.
Hardware,
This is
yeah.
actually the hardware adapting to the
Adapts to
software,
software,
experience
exactly.
that you want to have on that end, which is
Yeah.
a completely different. It reminds you too, we're all old enough, I think, to remember when we had tape decks in the card. You had
That's right.
the tom or whatever on
Yeah.
top, and
That's
you
right.
had like 17 things.
Correct.
That were now when
So
mobile came
yeah,
into
now
it.
phone, yeah.
It's
You
all
do,
into one, yeah.
AirPlay, Google's
Correct.
version, like all of that. Like now it just is all there.
That's
It reminds me a bit, and that came down to like operating systems. So we're
Yeah,
talking about operating systems in a lot
Very
of
true.
ways to those structures,
And
whatever.
also we're also kind of going back to the trend over the last few years is where everybody wanted a single pane of glass for all their software,
Yeah.
right? So I want to be able to see my video with my access. I want to see the visitors coming here if anything is going on, any kind of alarm, anything you have set up. I wanted it from a single pane of glass. I didn't want to have to open 4 different softwares or 3 different browser windows. Now, you can do that same thing with a hardware.
Yeah.
So instead of a single pane of glass software, now you can do a single actual piece of hardware to do all that with that same
Think
software.
of all the space people are going to have in the basements when they don't have separate computers for each different
That's
thing
right.
that they're going to have. All right, so we're coming around the corner
Sure.
on this conversation. So if we think about the trends, right? We talked about OSDP, we talked about mobile, we talked about biometrics and multi-tech technology on that side. It's a lot, and we picked 3 here, right?
Yeah.
We could have picked another
Oh, yeah.
10
Oh,
to
absolutely.
talk about flexibility and the future of it
Correct.
as an industry. So there's a lot. What type of advice would you give any of the stakeholders that are interested in this to where they can learn about it and to adopt? What advice do you give them?
I would say just be open to change. Number one,
Yep.
and there's a lot of conversation about the cost of change,
Yeah.
but I think it is pretty manageable if you consider all the facts and the advantages and the total cost of ownership, which is going to reduce in the long run.
Right.
The change is not that expensive and it's not that difficult.
Yep.
The only change I would say is the biggest change I would say is instead of running or replacing a 18.6 wire at the door with a Cat5 cable.
Okay.
I think that's the biggest change. But other than that, everything else is manageable.
Yeah, so it's mindset, change
Yeah.
management. I like the idea of it being being more curious.
Yeah.
You can't say the same thing. So what advice do you have?
I would say do your research, do your homework. A lot of this stuff is no longer, a lot of the industry things like the weekend, none of that is secret to integrators anymore, right? All this stuff is available out there. Google it, right? Whether you're an integrator or you're a customer looking for how can I upgrade my system, how can I worry about my building, how can I make that more secure? And this kind of goes back to the OSDP thing also. So everybody's worried about how can I make my security system more secure, and what's the infrastructure, what's my cybersecurity policies, but you're not even thinking about that communication from that reader to that panel. You're more concerned about the software and the information that's on it rather than the communication going from that endpoint to that software. So it's really, do your research. The information is available. It's out there. See his website. You can read everything on the biometric and everything that you're doing with the government, and Jake, all his work he's done with the biometrics and taking that to Capitol Hill and everything like that. So it's no longer, now you can see how the secret sauce is made, right? It's open, do your research, do your work, and then, make an educated decision based on what's best for your company and what you need to do.
Yeah, the curiosity, get educated, make the best decision that makes sense for your business as going forward, but the information's there. And I'm picking up on we're almost to the point too where we have to talk about securing the security system. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll peel that back at some future side of that.
Yep.
All right, so a lot of information. Say I didn't come to ISC West and I can't just after this go see this. I'm listening to this or watching it. Where can they find out more information? You mentioned SIA's website. Can you expand beyond SIA's website too? Sure. Where can I find out more information?
Anything where you can find basically any security information, you can come to our website, ZKTecoUSA.com, some of our other websites, Cielo365.com, AtlasCloud.io, all the different offerings that we have, whether it's on-premise, cloud, hardware, software, hybrid, everything is available there, or you can reach out to us directly.
All right, very good. Anywhere else on your end?
I'm always available. You see me at all the different shows.
Yeah.
Email me at manish@ZKTecoUSA.com.
What about the phone number? You want the direct line?
Sure. But yeah, I'm always open for discussions and always available.
And if you email him, it'll just end up in my lap.
That's good. That's good. Yeah. That's how it's called management. That's how that works.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. This is part 2 of the 3-part series that we have coming through, but really important conversation again around the future flexibility, where you break down OSDP, helping give that. The next one after that was the so we went OSDP, then mobile credential side of it, and then we moved into biometrics and the multi-technology concept and ideas around what that is. So fascinating conversation, really appreciate it. I look forward to part 3, which is about the solutions for today and tomorrow. We'll be discussing practical steps for navigating industry changes and identifying solutions that are best suited for today's needs while ensuring adaptability. I invite you to continue to follow us. Go to # the future of flexibility. Thank you, Manish. Thank you, Esteban. Thank you, Sal, wherever you are now. I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.